future can't wait.
Okay, so you've given us like this whole mountain of information, this snapshot of the entire crypto universe.
Yeah.
From the real like foundational tech stuff to you know, the straight up meme magic.
Straight up the meme coins.
And our job today is to cut through all that and like figure out what are the essential insights, the things that you really need to know.
Right.
To understand what's happening in this crazy, fast-paced world of crypto.
Absolutely. And we know that you're coming at this with your own, level of understanding of crypto.
Yeah.
Whether you're brand new or you're a seasoned veteran,
right.
We're going to do our best to explain everything in a way that makes sense without getting too bogged down in the technical details.
Right. We're going to try to keep this accessible.
Exactly.
So think of this as your like express route to like grasping the current situation and then what might be coming down the line in the future.
Exactly. Where's this all headed?
Yeah, exactly. And we're looking at everything from the base layer, decentralized finance platforms, the meme coins that can explode in value and then disappear overnight. The governance tokens that give holders a say, the protocols that let you lend, the old guard of crypto, the contenders who are like challenging Ethereum, and a whole bunch of meme-inspired tokens. So.
It's a whole wild world out there.
Whole zoo.
Yeah.
So let's jump right in. Okay, let's start with decentralized exchanges or DXs.
Yeah. And
the tokens that give their communities a voice.
Yeah, the governance aspect is huge. The really fascinating thing about DX is the idea that you're trading directly with other people. You're cutting out the middleman, the traditional centralized exchanges.
Right.
And Uniswap is, as your sources highlight, really a leader in this space, a powerhouse on the Ethereum blockchain.
It's huge.
Huge. And it's a strong reputation comes from the sheer volume of trading that happens there. It's a vital part of this whole DeFi ecosystem.
Right. So if you're someone who, really believes in the future of decentralized finance, the general sentiment around Uniswap's token, UNI, seems to be positive a buy, as the information puts it.
Right.
But it also mentions a sell sentiment that can happen during like bear markets.
Yeah.
So why that shift? Why?
Yeah. If we zoom out a little bit, during market downturns, people tend to trade less.
Right.
Right? Which directly impacts the fees that these DEX generate.
Yeah.
So think of it like a marketplace.
Yeah.
Fewer shoppers means less business, right?
Yeah.
For UNI holders, this drop in fees can make the token less appealing in the short term.
Yeah.
And plus you have so many DXs competing for users.
Right.
That the pressure on fees can get pretty intense, further impacting Uniswap's earnings.
That makes sense. So like the good stuff about it though, the notes mention a few advantages. It's a leading platform. It's holding UNI gives you a voice in like the future of the platform, the governance.
Huge, yeah.
And it operates without a central company controlling it.
Right. That governance piece is really significant.
Yeah.
Holding UNI actually gives you influence over where the platform goes.
Yeah.
And then no central control.
Yeah.
That's like a core principle of this whole decentralization movement.
Right.
Appealing to people who want to move away from those traditional financial institutions.
Yeah. But there are some downsides too, right?
Oh, absolutely.
The big one that seems to come up again and again is Ethereum's really high gas fees.
Yeah, definitely.
That can really...
That's a hurdle.
Yeah, it can really like eat into your earnings.
Especially for smaller trades.
Yeah, especially for smaller trades.
It raises this fundamental question of like, who can actually afford to use these platforms regularly?
Yeah.
When those gas fees are so high, it creates a barrier.
Yeah.
Right. And it makes smaller transactions just not worth it.
Makes them impractical.
Impractical, exactly.
Right.
And this is where you see competition coming in from cheaper alternatives, like PancakeSwap.
Right, right.
And the notes also mention that UNI holders don't directly benefit from a huge share of the platform's revenue, which can be frustrating for some investors.
Yeah, so looking ahead, the prediction in the information is $20 to $30 by 2025.
Okay.
But with a big if, if DeFi keeps growing, and if Ethereum can actually handle more activity without these huge fees. So,
yeah, those are big ifs.
Yeah, it seems like a lot is riding on Ethereum.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
Ethereum's ability to scale, to process more transactions quickly and affordably, has been an ongoing challenge. And Uniswap's future is very tied to how Ethereum progresses.
Yeah. Okay, so speaking of that scaling issue,
yeah,
there's another project specifically designed to like tackle that.
Right.
Arbitrum.
Arbitrum, yeah. It's an interesting one.
It's described as a layer 2 scaling solution using something called optimistic rollups.
Yeah.
Which
sounds very optimistic.
Well, yeah, very optimistic.
Yeah.
So how legitimate is Arbitrum in like this quest to fix this problem?
Its legitimacy really comes from directly addressing this bottleneck in the Ethereum ecosystem.
Okay.
So by processing transactions on a separate layer and then bundling them up to be finalized on the main Ethereum chain,
right,
Arbitrum can significantly reduce those pesky gas fees and speed things up.
Yeah.
And it's really gaining traction. You see more and more projects adopting it,
right,
which shows that it's working.
Right. So the buy-sell sentiment here seems to be very much tied to whether or not you believe in Ethereum.
Right. Are you bullish on Ethereum?
Right, yeah.
Then you're probably bullish on solutions like Arbitrum.
Right.
But the sell case emerges if things get too crowded.
Right, the layer 2 space.
Yeah, just gets too many players.
Yeah, too many players.
Exactly.
So the advantages seem pretty clear. Lower fees, faster speeds.
Right.
Strong support from the developers working on it.
Yeah.
And the fact that it works like seamlessly with existing Ethereum applications.
Yeah, that smooth compatibility is a huge advantage.
Yeah.
Developers can basically take their existing apps, their decentralized application, and deploy them on Arbitrum without many changes.
Yeah.
Which helps the ecosystem grow really quickly.
Yeah. Okay. So on the downside, competition is mentioned.
Of course.
Polygon and Optimism specifically.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's still a relatively young ecosystem.
Yes, still early.
Yeah. And then also this this dependence on Ethereum. So if Ethereum were to fail, Arbitrum would probably go down with it.
That's a key point. Yeah. While layer 2s aim to make Ethereum better, they're still built on top of it.
Right.
So any problems with Ethereum would inevitably affect them.
All right. So long-term prediction, $5 to $10 by 2025.
Okay.
Again, if Ethereum scales successfully.
Right.
And they also mentioned that, all this competition in this layer 2 space might
Let's limit the games.
Yeah, limit the gains.
Exactly. So strong value proposition.
Yeah.
But the market is complex.
Yeah.
It's constantly changing.
Right. Right. Okay. Let's shift gears a little bit.
Okay.
And talk about DeFi lending protocols.
Yeah.
With AAVE as a prime example.
AAVE, yeah, another big player.
Huge.
In DeFi.
Yeah.
Highly legitimate, lots of assets locked up in it.
Yeah. The buy sentiment makes sense. If DeFi grows.
AAVE grows.
AAVE grows, right?
Right.
But the sell trigger is interesting.
Yeah.
Regulatory risks.
This highlights a major uncertainty hanging over the entire DeFi space.
Right.
As governments and regulators around the world try to figure out how to deal with these decentralized platforms. Yeah. Any unfavorable regulations could really impact lending protocols like AAVE.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. The advantages of AAVE, though, are pretty good. Innovative features like flash loans.
Right.
Widespread adoption.
There's people using it.
Yeah, and expanding to multiple different blockchains.
Right.
So it's not just tied to
Not putting all their eggs in one basket.
Exactly.
Yeah. And flash loans, that's a unique DeFi innovation.
Yeah.
Borrowing assets without collateral.
Wow.
As long as you repay it within the same transaction, it opens up all these possibilities for things like arbitrage and these complex trading strategies.
So that's a plus for people who know how to use it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. The downsides.
Yeah.
Again, Ethereum's gas fees.
There it is again.
Limiting who can actually use it.
Yeah.
Competition.
Of course.
This time it's Compound and Maker.
Yeah.
and then once again, that regulatory uncertainty.
Right. That one's a big one.
Yeah.
The competition in DeFi lending is intense.
Yeah.
Every platform is trying to offer something unique to attract users.
Right.
So navigating that and staying ahead of potential regulations.
Yeah.
Those are the big challenges for AAVE.
Yeah. Okay. Long-term prediction.
Yeah.
$300 to $500 by 2025.
Wow.
Sounds optimistic.
Very optimistic.
But again, assuming DeFi continues to grow.
Right. Can it weather the storm?
Yeah. Can it weather the storm of a market downturn?
Exactly. That price range reflects the potential if DeFi really takes off.
Right.
But it also acknowledges that risk.
Yeah.
That's always there in the crypto market.
Right. Okay, let's talk about some of the more established, longer-standing cryptocurrencies.
The OGs?
Yeah. Litecoin, often referred to as the digital silver.
Right, to Bitcoin's digital gold.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Launched way back in 2011.
Yeah.
One of the veterans.
One of the old-timers.
Yeah. So the buy sentiment seems to be, people like it because it's stable.
It's reliable.
Yeah.
It's been around.
Yeah, it's been around.
It has that track record.
But the sell trigger would be if newer, more exciting coins kind of
take the spotlight.
Yeah, take the spotlight.
Exactly. So
Litecoin's longevity is definitely a point in its favor.
Right.
It's established itself as stable and reliable.
Yeah.
But the crypto space moves fast.
Yeah.
New projects, new features.
Right.
They can overshadow those older ones if they don't keep up.
Right. Yeah. So the advantages listed here are faster transaction speeds and lower costs compared to Bitcoin.
Right.
Long history of operation.
Turn around the block.
Yeah. And the fact that, a decent number of merchants actually accept it.
Real world, yes.
Yeah, for payment. So
those are tangible benefits.
Yeah. Practical stuff.
That have helped Litecoin's adoption over the years.
Yeah.
Being faster and cheaper than Bitcoin. Right. Makes it more practical for day-to-day use in some cases.
Yeah. Okay, but the downsides point to a perceived lack of new developments, new features.
Not a lot of innovation.
Yeah, kind of like,
It's not the shiny new toy.
It's not the shiny new toy.
Yeah.
And in a sense that there's not a lot of active development.
Yeah, not a lot happening.
Yeah, which
should be concerning, yeah.
Yeah, for the long term.
In a space that's constantly evolving.
Right.
Stagnation can be a real disadvantage.
Right.
If Litecoin doesn't adapt and introduce new features, it risks becoming irrelevant.
Right. Okay, prediction, $150 to $200 by 2025.
Okay.
Kind of modest.
Yeah, relatively modest.
Yeah, and they specifically say that it could fade into irrelevance if it doesn't get upgraded.
That's a warning sign?
Yeah, that's a big warning sign.
It suggests that while Litecoin might maintain some value based on its history.
Right. Significant growth.
Yeah.
It's going to need something new.
Yeah, it needs some new tricks.
New tricks, new developments to really capture attention.
Right. Okay, let's talk about XRP.
XRP.
Another cryptocurrency with a very specific purpose, which is to help financial institutions make fast and low-cost cross-border payments.
Right. Streamline that whole process.
Yeah. So its legitimacy has been up and down with that big SEC lawsuit. Yeah, but the notes say that, the partial resolution back in 2023 definitely gave it a boost.
Definitely removed some uncertainty that had been hanging over XRP for a long time.
So that clarity probably helped with the buy sentiment.
It makes sense, yeah.
Yeah, especially for people who believe in this idea of, streamlining international payments. Right. But the sell sentiment is still tied to...
Will it actually be adopted?
Yeah. Will banks and financial institutions actually use it?
Yeah, that's the big question.
So, advantages. Super fast transaction speeds.
Right.
Already being used by some financial institutions.
Some, yeah.
Very low fees.
Those are compelling advantages for its target market.
Yeah.
They're addressing real pain points in the traditional systems, which are often slow, expensive, and a hassle.
Yeah. Okay, but on the downside, the centralized control by Ripple.
The company behind XRP.
Right.
Yeah.
Lingering regulatory concerns.
Even with the partial resolution.
Yeah, even with the partial resolution. And it's kind of limited integration with the whole DeFi world.
That's right. The centralization is a concern for some in the crypto community who prefer fully decentralized systems. Yeah. And while the U.S. lawsuit is partially resolved, other countries might still come after them. Right. And that limited presence in DeFi, that restricts its potential in that space.
Yeah, okay, so prediction, $2 to $5 by 2025.
Okay.
But that's specifically if
banks
adopt it. Yeah, and also if Ripple is successful.
Right, so it's very closely tied to Ripple's fate.
Right, so it's...
Unlike many other cryptos that are more decentralized, XRP is really linked to Ripple's success.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about a more recent high flyer in the crypto space.
Okay.
Solana,
the
blockchain that,
came out of nowhere. Promising the world.
Yeah, super fast.
Blazing fast speeds.
Yeah.
a thriving ecosystem for NFTs, DeFi.
Yeah.
It's got it all.
It has it all. So the buy sentiment is very much
driven by the
technology. Yeah.
Yeah. Impressive.
But the sell trigger is
the outages.
Those recurring network outages.
Yeah. That's a big problem.
I know.
The tech is great.
Yeah.
But can it stay online?
Yeah. Can it stay online? That's the question.
That's the question.
So the advantages, they really highlight that speed and low cost.
Right.
The vibrant ecosystem, they mentioned Serum specifically.
Yeah, Serum's a big one.
Yeah, and the fact that it's very developer-friendly.
Very easy to build on.
Right.
The speed and low fees have made it really attractive for applications that need high transaction volumes.
Right.
Like DXs and NFT platforms.
Yeah.
And the developer-friendly environment has fostered a lot of innovation.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, but the downsides, those outages, which,
erode trust. Big time.
Yeah, and this concern about
centralization.
The centralization of the validators.
Right, who are supposed to be keeping the network running.
Right.
Yeah. These are critical issues that Solana needs to address. If it wants to stay on top, network stability is key for building confidence.
Right.
And they need to decentralize those validators to avoid single points of failure.
Yeah. Okay, so prediction.
Yeah.
$300 to $500 by 2025.
Wow, that's optimistic.
Very optimistic.
Yeah.
But
big if?
Big if. Can they fix those outages?
Exactly.
So it's got the speed.
It's got the speed.
But can
it stay online?
Yeah. Can it stay online? That's the question.
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about Cardano.
Cardano.
Another one that's been around for a while, known for its
academic approach.
Very research-driven academic approach.
Yeah, peer-reviewed.
Yeah, so the buy sentiment seems to be from people who are,
long-term thinkers?
Yeah, the long-term thinkers.
Patient investors.
But the sell would be if
it doesn't deliver.
Yeah.
If the platform
lives up to the hype.
Yeah, it doesn't live up to the hype.
Okay, so
Cardano has always emphasized this rigorous peer-reviewed development process.
Right.
Which appeals to those who are in it for the long haul.
Yeah.
But this slow and steady approach can be frustrating for some who want to see faster progress.
Right. Yeah, they want to see results.
They want to see results now.
No.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So the advantages, eco-friendly, proof-of-stake consensus mechanism,
right.
The strong academic backing.
The research is there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a scalable design.
Designed to grow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that all sounds good.
On paper, it looks great.
On paper, yeah.
Yeah. Proof of stake is much more energy efficient.
Right.
Proof of work.
Yeah.
The academic rigor ensures robustness and security through all this research and testing.
Right.
And scalability is key.
Yeah.
For long-term success.
Right, right. Okay, the downsides, that slow pace of development, a smaller ecosystem.
Not as many dApps.
Not as many dApps.
Not as many users.
Yeah, compared to the big players.
Right.
And this feeling that, there was all this hype.
A lot of hype.
Yeah.
Not enough substance.
Yeah, not enough yet.
Yeah.
Not enough substance yet.
The slow development can lead to frustration.
Right.
People want to see those dApps, those real-world use cases.
Right.
Building a thriving ecosystem means attracting developers and users.
Yeah.
And Cardano faces stiff competition there.
Yeah. Okay. Prediction. $1 to $3 by 2025.
Okay.
But that's if the dApps.
That's the dApps take off.
Yeah, if they take off. So
they need adoption.
The
tech might be great.
Yeah.
But they need people to actually use it.
Right, right. Okay. Let's move on to Stellar.
Stellar. Okay.
Another project focusing on
payments.
Yeah, fast, low-cost cross-border payments.
Right, similar to XRP.
Yeah, similar to XRP.
Yeah.
And it's got some big partners.
IBM, MoneyGram.
Yeah, IBM, MoneyGram, they're mentioned in the notes.
Some big names.
Yeah, so the buy sentiment is...
and utility.
Yeah, people like that.
For the world use.
Yeah, it's being used for payments, but the sell would be if
XRP wins.
Yeah, if XRP just becomes the dominant player.
Right, the competition.
Yeah.
Okay. Stellar and XRP.
Yeah.
They're both aiming to streamline international payments.
Yeah.
And those partnerships.
Yeah.
They show that Stellar is already being used.
Right.
But XRP could become the go-to solution for financial institutions.
Yeah.
And that could hurt Stellar's growth.
Right. Okay. So advantages, low fees, fast transactions.
The key ingredients for payments.
real-world use cases through those partnerships.
Right. It's not just theoretical.
Yeah.
It's actually being used.
And it's a nonprofit.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So that might appeal to some users.
Right.
That nonprofit ethos suggests a focus on financial inclusion, accessibility, not just profits.
Yeah. Okay. Downsides.
Oh.
Smaller market cap than XRP.
Okay.
Less presence in DeFi.
Limited DeFi exposure.
Yeah, and some degree of centralization.
Similar to XRP.
Similar to XRP. Yeah.
These limitations could hinder its growth.
Right.
Compared to XRP.
Right.
And it's not as involved in the DeFi boom.
Yeah. Okay. Prediction, $0 to $1 by 2025.
Okay.
Steady grower.
Steady, yeah.
But contingent on continued adoption.
Right. It needs to keep being used to grow.
So that's a more like
conservative.
Yeah. Maybe more realistic than some of the others.
Yeah. All right. Bitcoin Cash.
Bitcoin Cash, okay.
A cryptocurrency that came from a fork of Bitcoin.
Right, a split.
Yeah, split. And its main focus is
bigger blocks.
Larger block sizes to enable faster and cheaper transactions.
On the blockchain.
On the blockchain, yeah. So the buy sentiment is mostly people who
want cheap payments.
Yeah, they want those low-cost payments.
Yeah.
But the sell case is
Bitcoin stays on top.
Yeah, if Bitcoin just keeps dominating.
Bitcoin's the king.
Yeah, so.
Bitcoin Cash came from this disagreement in the Bitcoin community about how to scale the network. They wanted bigger blocks to handle more transactions. Faster, cheaper.
But Bitcoin's dominance and all these other scaling solutions have kind of
limited its adoption.
Yeah, limited its adoption, so the advantages listed are faster and cheaper transactions than Bitcoin.
Right.
It aligns with some people's interpretation of Satoshi's vision.
Right. Peer-to-peer electronic cash.
Right. And it's seen some merchant adoption.
Some real-world use.
Yeah.
These are the core arguments for Bitcoin Cash.
Right.
If you want cheap on-chain transactions, it's a decent alternative to Bitcoin.
Right. But the downsides, much smaller community than Bitcoin.
Smaller community.
Yeah.
Less network effect. Lack of innovation, new developments.
Yeah, not a lot of new stuff.
And a lot of people are just like
confused.
Yeah, confused about what it is.
What is Bitcoin Cash? Host speaker.
If you enjoyed this content, please like, subscribe, follow for more updates, and don't forget to sign up for the exclusive bonuses down below.
Listen up, traders, it's your lucky day. Quick gains insights is here to stay. Subscribe now, come join the fray. Financial wisdom will light your way. Join Quick Gains Insights today. Like this video, pave the way. Sign up in the description, without delay. 4,000 free insights today. Like this video, pave the way. Sign up in the description without delay. 4,000 free, let's slay.